Today we're going to look at how students are using rounding and compatible numbers in order to estimate a solution. These two strategies are very similar. So we're going to first begin by looking at compatible numbers. This basically means that I'm going to change a number to be something friendly, and in order so that I can find an estimate. We also can use compatible numbers when we look at an actual answer, but when we're looking for the estimate, what we're looking for is that I have some numbers here that would be so much easier to work with if I saw something that added up to something I know. And a lot of times what they would add up to something I know, or even subtract to something I know, is meaning that it would look like a 10. So for example, here when I see this 2 in the ones place plus this 6, it would be so much nicer if this 2 was a 4, or if this 6 was an 8, because then I know I would have a 10. And in my head I can make 10s very fast, although it doesn't always have to be a 10, but a lot of times it is. So what I would do is, instead of rounding this number, what I could do is, in my head, change it to be 48, which is still very close, but then I would know that the 8 plus the 2 would give me a 10. And then I would see, okay, so I got 10 from there, and then I have a 4 here and a 7 here. And I can even decompose that to be, in my head, because I like those compatible numbers that get to 10, that's really like a 3 plus a 1. So this 7 plus a 3 would equal 10, plus this one is 11. So I actually have 11 tens, which is 110. And then I have this other 100 here. And so then students would use this to add up very quickly that, okay, I see I have 100 plus 100 is 200, plus 110 plus another 10 is 220. And then they could actually find the real answer because they could, subtract in the 2 that they had added, but since we're looking for an estimate, they don't have to. What we're hoping that they can do is they're just using number sense. That's what compatible numbers is and when I see something that's friendly, it makes it where I can make very quick jumps with addition instead of lining it up and going slowly, especially if I don't need an exact answer. Now, our other strategy, and one that is probably the one that we use the most, it's also the one that we focused on whenever we were in school, was rounding. And in rounding, how we think for our students to look at rounding is that we can always round to the tens place, and if we have a hundreds number, we could round to the hundreds place, although we talk about how that's usually a farther estimate. It's not as close as when we round to the tens, so a lot of times we do round to the tens. But when we're talking about picking the number that we would round to, we think about it being on a number line. And so if 172 was on a number line, what would be the 10 that would come before it? Okay, that would be 170. And then for a jump of 10, what would be the 10 that comes after it? 180. So I think that 172 would be somewhere on this number line. And I always tell my students, think about the halfway point for just a little bit more of a help. Well, halfway of a jump of 10 would be plus 5, so it would be 175. Okay, so 172 is before that, so then it's closest to 170, which is why we round to 170. We don't want that they just know that it does round there, but why? That it rounds to 170. Same thing with 46. When I think about it being on a number line, think about that 40 is before, 50 is after, 45 would be in the middle. So if it's at the halfway point or bigger, then I would round up. So I'd round to 50. So this would be 170 plus 50 to get this rounded answer. And then I could use a strategy to even add this. I'll show you because we use this a lot in class, that instead of finding out what 7 plus 5 is, I can decompose or take apart this 7, like we did earlier, to be a 5 plus a 2, because then in my head I see 5 tens plus 5 tens, and I know, oh, that's 100, plus the 100 that's already here, plus the 2 tens that are left over here is 20, and I'm looking at 220. And so that would be how I've gotten my rounded answer, and I'm using strategies to help. If they didn't want to decompose this, that's okay. We just work on that because we're looking for students to be fluent with addition and subtraction. So it's not that oh no, I don't have it memorized, but I may not have it memorized what 7 plus 5 is, but I could use something to help me get there.